Hey everybody, welcome to Farsighted. It's CNET's show about what's coming next, tomorrow, and way, way beyond tomorrow. I'm your host, Eric Mack, in an unusually rainy and snowy New Mexico, but I'm joined in the studios in San Francisco by Bonnie Burton, Kelsey Adams, Jeff Sparkman, and Stephen Beecham. If you want to join the conversation today, the chat rooms are live on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com/CNET. You'll find the Farsighted link right there on the homepage right now. We're also on live stream at livestream.com/CNET/Farsighted. Or if that's too long, just send a tweet with the hashtag Farsighted, and I'll keep an eye out for that too. So later on in the show, we're going to hear about what went down at Silicon Valley Comic-Con from a few of our intrepid correspondents there. But first, we have a very special guest on the show today who I'd like to introduce by way of a really brief rant, and I promise that's a good thing. We talk an awful lot here about science fiction and science fact on this show, and as a science writer and a journalist, I've mentioned before that I have kind of a sometimes uneasy relationship with sci-fi because I worry that it's given us a society somewhat unrealistic expectations about what science and technology can do and how quickly and at what scale it can do those things. I mean, I get really excited when we talk to scientists who have found molecular hydrogen on the moons of Saturn using a spacecraft, by the way, that was not designed to do that at all. But then the response, I often hear from so many people is, well, what's the big deal? Call me when we found the aliens and you can beam me directly there. But there is a really rare group of people out there who dedicate themselves to bridging that huge gap and put everything they have, and almost always at a high level of risk, into making those science fiction fantasies, even the crazy stuff from comic books and superhero stories, making that into reality. And we've got one of those people with us on the line today via Skype from Silicon Valley. His name is Adam Draper. He's the founder and managing director of Boost VC, which is an accelerator investing in startups working on blockchain, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, drones. There's a really cool one that connects companies with university researchers. And of course, one of your startups is even working on a hoverboard. Adam Draper, welcome to Farsighted.
Hey, that was an awesome intro. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, did I get it right? What is Boost VC in your own words?
Yeah, so we invest in startups, so we help startup founders get going. It's a programmatic approach to investing. It's called an accelerator, where twice a year we back 20 to 25 startups and we put them through the gauntlet of creating a good infrastructure for that startup. We actually provide housing and office space, and we invest in the startups that go through our program. The way that I like to think about it, though, is we're sort of a hub to Silicon Valley for companies from all over the world to connect when working in virtual reality, blockchain, flying cars, what have you. And we happen to have built out our brand really strongly around blockchain and virtual reality, though.
And so why is that the focus? Why pick those two areas, VR and blockchain specifically? What do you see in those areas?
So, there's a long answer and a short answer. Short answer, they're awesome.
Fair. That makes sense. I mean, that's a good reason to invest.
Long answer is 4 years ago, I was an angel investor. My background is I went to UCLA as an English major. I founded a company out of UCLA to help private companies raise capital online. Which was a new concept. It would be like, where would you go to buy shares of Uber today? We were trying to solve that problem for like Facebook and Twitter and that type of thing. And then I found that I really enjoyed the mentorship side of helping startups not make the same mistakes I did. But how we ended up choosing I was an angel investor before I started this accelerator, and I backed a company called Coinbase. And so Coinbase is, if you've heard of Bitcoin or the blockchain, it's the most financed startup in that space, most trusted startup in the Bitcoin blockchain space. And then was one guy in a basement building things. And he And he pitched me this really big idea of connecting the world through financial transactions. And I bought in hook, line, and sinker. And then when I founded Boost VC, which was about 2 weeks later, we ended up dedicating a big percentage of our future towards building out this Bitcoin and blockchain ecosystem. And so then we realized what we do is we build communities around emerging technology. We basically, when something's early, we back a lot of startups and launch the network in the ecosystem, like in the most basic of sense. And then what we realized is it didn't matter if it was blockchain or some other technology. So two and a half years ago, we looked at the market of technologies out there, and I tried virtual reality, and I was like, it's here, it's happening. This is the platform. This is going to be the future of computing. Let's jump in. And so 2.5 years ago, we jumped into that, and we've backed now 180 startups total, 55 in the VR space, 65 in the blockchain Bitcoin space, and a blimp, a flying car, a suit of armor.
So of all the VR stuff you've seen, what's some of the coolest stuff that you think we could have soon, really successful looking projects?
Oh man, you can have anything today. Go buy an HTC Vive or an Oculus Rift, and you can have the high-end experience of different worlds, being able to build what you're showing on the screen right now is Sculptor Vr, which is it's a gravity game, which is really fascinating. Now it's a gravity game. He made it so that he built out a game engine so that other people could build games. And then art. Okay, my big vision for VR is the way that we're going to learn more faster. So that's my long-term 10-year vision. Like VR is the way that we learn, because how we learn is through experience, and VR allows you to experience more faster than ever before. Same way that the internet allowed us to index a lot of information and became sort of this web of information. This is indexing experiences and allowing us to consume more experiences faster, which is really, really exciting on a huge level for education. But in order to get there, we're going to go through a gaming stage of development where people are early adopters gaming. We're going to go through building things. You need tools to create the content. Right now, it's sort of difficult to create content for virtual reality. We need more of that. And then social, just being there with other people is really, really important.
So that's pretty awesome. I mean, I wonder if you can kind of build on that with the other things that you're working on, and how do you see some of the companies you're working with now changing how life is going to be 10, 20 years from now? You already talked about learning stuff in VR. What other things are coming down the pike that are just going to be part of daily life in 10 or 20 years?
So one of the biggest trends, I don't know what the listening audience, viewing audience, you guys know about Bitcoin and the blockchain, but it's fundamentally going to change the way governments and currencies work. And that is a really exciting trend that I'm watching as people are decoupling government from currency. And that concept is very, very powerful, where suddenly you can be in control of your own money, your own value, and your trust. So we're on a big level. I think that's going to be a big change, that we can't predict what's going to be happening after that happens, which is exciting. There's a great quote that I quote every once in a while from Phil Libin. He founded Evernote. He was talking about bots, but in general, he said the future is either going to look like Star Trek or Mad Max. Anytime I can make it look a little more like Star Trek, I invest. And that's sort of how I feel. That's in essence the philosophy that I've consumed, along with anything that gets me closer to a Iron Man suit.
we would really like to hear more about that. What do you feel? What do you look for in an Iron Man suit project? What does an Iron Man suit really need?
Oh my! So I'm frozen on your screen. I'm actually. Hopefully you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Yeah. So this video that you're showing right now is what I mean. So this guy, Richard Browning, he actually came to our demo day, and he has built his own Ironman suit. He's flying, and this absolutely blew my mind. Like, I can't actually explain how incredible this was. Actually, there's a quick clip of me in the background, in the front row, and it's like I just freak out that this thing. And like this is, I mean, it's the dream. Like the ability to just like, I'm over in the corner right there. It's the dream of being able, complete freedom, and being able to fly. And this guy, he's hovering a foot off the ground or 2-3 feet off the ground, but he could just go. It's just there's a lot more dangers that happen when you just go. And so but he's a fantastic guy, really brilliant, and he's captured the imagination of like what's possible. I feel like ever since this video came out, then Larry Page's company, I think it's called Kitty Hawk, released a flying car video. Like there are a lot of these flying vehicles that are that are emerging right now, which is which I'm very, very excited about, because I think that changes the way that we think about travel. That changes the way it's going to change everything.
You know, a funny story, Richard Browning sent me a press release on March 31st about debuting that suit. I made him send me the UK patent number because I didn't believe it was real, to prove it wasn't an April Fool's joke.
Oh, so he told me that. He told me that like a lot of people still thought it was fake because it came out on April Fool's Day.
Yeah, it was the day before, and I was dealing with his PR person, and I really ran her through the ringer to prove that it wasn't fake. But yeah, that was pretty incredible stuff.
So it's real. I can verifiably, if you trust me, which, you know, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't, but it's real. It was incredible, and I'm hoping to be in line to have an Ironman suit.
How loud was it? Because I know with a lot of the jetpacks, they're
so
deafeningly loud, and I was just curious, how loud is that suit when it's in operation, or was it like, you know, not so noticeable?
Oh, it's a full like audio touch experience. Like the wind is like chaosly throwing dirt all over the place. And you know, super loud, and then this guy's flying, and you're freaking out about it. But it's, the sound is about 3 leaf blowers.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a little louder, maybe.
That's actually not too bad, because it's the jetpacks are the ones that sound like you have like a sonic, not maybe a sonic boom, but definitely a lot louder, where people, you know, have ringing in the ears long after.
Yeah, we all had earplugs in too, so
yeah.
maybe it was that loud.
No, you would know, because I mean, I remember there's this guy that had a jetpack, and he used to dress up like Boba Fett. And when I worked at Lucasfilm, we would hire him for special events like a celebration or a convention or something. And we had to warn the city that we were in that he was going to be doing this because it's so loud. It sounds like a jet engine, but you can hear it for blocks and blocks and blocks away. And he's also high up. I mean, he goes up pretty far. So it's not like he's just hovering off the ground. I mean, he's like, he comes out of nowhere and then lands, and it's super loud. So I was just curious with this type of, because it's not the same type of equipment. It's totally different. So I was just curious.
Yeah, he's the first one that has done it this way, which is sort of like, he has to be in super good shape to be able to do it.
Yeah. I was wondering about that, like what kind of, I don't know, training they need to go through.
So he has to do like, what's it called, kinesthetics, the rings like the gymnasts use, and
right.
Hold the positions and stuff, and
Iron Cross, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
And he's in super good shape. The guy's a machine. He runs like super marathons or something. Like, he's super awesome.
So if he wasn't strong enough to maintain the right kind of posture, would he sort of get wildly knocked off balance by the engines and so on?
So one is the only thing that's ever happened to him, he said, was he fell. So he was a couple feet off the ground, and the arm one of the arms basically came loose, or the jet like threw him to the ground a little bit. But there's a default like kill switch that everything dies, and it wasn't that big of a deal. He makes it sound he believes that it's safer than a motorcycle.
Well, sure.
which
So,
I don't know if that's the argument you want to make, but it's
Well, it could be like safer than a hoverboard, considering that a lot of those hoverboards just ignite for no reason. So,
well, you're working on an actual hoverboard, though, right, Adam? You got a company that is?
Yeah. So we backed a Latvian entrepreneur, 18-year-old, and he's fantastic, and in like this is what he wants to dedicate his life to, and he's building his end vision is a flying car, but he is as a segue to that being appropriate. So it's pretty awesome.
cool.
The company's called Airboard, we're super excited about it. He's basically what we look for is tenacity in our entrepreneurs, and that's what really wins championships. So we're really excited about all of our entrepreneurs, but like all the technologies we're investing in, these are the things that in 5 years we're going to be using, and maybe for the flying cars and Iron Man suits, maybe it's 10, but like the like virtual reality, we're all going to be using virtual reality. It is more efficient to meet someone in VR than it is to meet them in person. And that's going to be a huge business use case. Like we backed a company that's doing. So like if I'm designing a product and I need it to be manufactured in China or wherever it needs to be manufactured, I can show them the object in 3D, and I'm turning it over and showing them and expanding it, and I can explain every piece of it, so there's less of a communication error than when you're just sending like 2D emails back and forth with one another.
That
Right
sounds
on.
awesome.
So where do you see? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, there's real use cases for this stuff. It's really exciting.
Where do you see the flying car thing in 10 years? Because there's people like vertical takeoff and landing is like one thing that Uber is looking into. Some of those jetpack guys think that they'll have some version of what they're doing that'll just be like personal transportation. Where do you see that going? Like the Uber ride sharing drones? Are we all going to have flying cars? Is it going to be more of a ride sharing situation? What do you think?
I think it's a really interesting question because first off, you need to assume that flying car, and it's a little bit of an assumption because we're not quite sure, but you have to assume that flying cars is more efficient than like driving and things like that. And for an individual, I think it probably will be, but gas-wise, I don't know. It's going to be high cost. What's it good for? Is it mid-range? Is it that like 50-minute trip, or is it the 10-minute trip? What's it replacing in our life? So those are like the questions that you'd want to ask. It will be less efficient for moving huge like cargo. It will be more efficient for moving people. And so I think, I think in 10, 15 years, we're going to be the coolest thing ever, autonomous cars, flying cars. So my daughter, who is 3 years old, will never need to drive. I'm very excited about that.
I never thought about that. That's good thinking there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much of the flying vehicles are autonomous, because I was just thinking, oh, now I have a way to see car crashes above me. Because people are notoriously bad drivers, even though the tech is so advanced right now. It's almost like because we can like text and do things, we're not paying attention to our driving even more than before. So I'm hoping that if it's air travel people, either it'll be autonomous, so robots who aren't gonna all of a sudden want to pretend they're in Fast and Furious, they won't be the ones driving. Or maybe, it'll be reserved for emergency purposes, so actual police and ambulances and fire trucks can get where they're supposed to be getting quicker. that would be great. But it'll be interesting to see like who's actually going to be using and what they're going to be used for at the beginning, or if it's just going to turn into Fifth Element and we're all like barely running into each other.
I'm hoping. I'm hoping everything is done with magnets, because we're seeing all these, quadcopter things and this Kitty Hawk thing we're just watching, and they're blowing air around that jet thing. They're blowing air and blowing dust and garbage.
I know,
all over
my
the place.
allergies get.
It's gonna be you walk outside, you're gonna go flying over your head. It's gonna be crazy.
Well, we may need like some sort of like allergen helmets to wear so we don't instantly get a mouthful of dust. But yeah, no, I'm always curious about that, because also we've been dreaming about this since sci-fi's existed. So I mean, not even just Star Wars and Star Trek, but in the 50s. I mean, if you look at illustrations from Popular Mechanics from the 50s and earlier, these were things people were hoping for would be already a reality now. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, Jetsons. The guy, he was a middle-class man who flew a flying plane to work.
There's a great joke about that too, is because of the future of Jetsons, no one walks anywhere. They're always on escalators, or they're always on sidewalks that are moving. That when they actually have to walk on their own, they can't. It was a Harvey Birdman skit, I think, where they just couldn't get anywhere. They were always out of breath because they had to walk places in the Harvey Birdman cartoon, whereas in Jetsons, they flew everywhere, or they were on escalators. Or
the Jetsons spaceship is really quiet too. Listen, it just goes like
it's like a Prius.
It's not like jet engine.
Wow.
The Fantastic Four had a really nice flying car.
Kids were watching it was like
yeah. Well, also all the buildings look like mid-century modern, and everyone has like a robot helper, which we sort of do now, but they aren't quite dressed like Rosie.
This is how I want to drop my kid off at school.
Yeah.
Seriously, because right now I have to physically walk them into school and then say goodbye. I just want to dump them off of jettison them out of my
literally jettison
you're
them.
being recorded right now, right? Your kids
I'll show
can
this
see
to them later.
And so Adam, you're a big comics guy, right?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge comic book fan.
What are your faves?
So, my thesis around investing has been build the Iron Man suit.
Right.
So VR, if we're flying in space, the currency of space is probably not going to be paper, so we went into Bitcoin. And then, I'm looking at actual Iron Man suits. But the superhero I grew up on was Peter Parker, Spider-Man. And right now, my favorite comic book is by a guy named Kirkman. Is it Robert Kirkman? It's called Invincible. There isn't a movie.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I'm a huge comic book guy.
Awesome. So our crew here in San Francisco was down at Silicon Valley Comic-Con this past weekend. I wonder how much you guys saw down there that kind of ties into what Adam's working on, what we've been talking about.
Well, I went to the NASA panel that they had, and that was the thing that surprised me the most. Was people asked them, "Are you worried about funding right now?" And they said, "Actually, we're getting a lot. Things are looking really good for us right now, and so we're just working hard on getting to Mars." And they talked about methane and liquid water and glaciers and drones, and it was really great. But you guys did.
No, I was just gonna say, they're getting funding because Trump just watched Star Wars on Air Force One, so
Rogue One.
He just watched Rogue One, so who knows what kind of funding he's thinking about. I love the NASA booth there. I think NASA should be at every comic book convention. The reason that Silicon Valley Comic-Con is so different than San Diego Comic-Con or New York Comic-Con or other Comic-Cons that you might be used to is that they have a whole level of tech and science, as well as the usual suspects of comic books and video games and the movies and TV stuff that we're all excited about when we go to comic book conventions, where it's more of a pop culture convention nowadays.
And Woz is really interested in the way that comic books and sci-fi help us plan future science and visualize future societies, and the connection there.
So it almost felt like a science fair. It kind of felt like a bridge between Maker Fair, which is something that happens around the country, which is kind of like a science fair on, steroids. It's actually, I always call it Burning Man for kids because it's like the coolest science fair ever. All these Tesla coils and robots everywhere, and of course all the R2D2 astromechs, and it's really great to get kids excited about science and tech and engineering. And I wish that more comic book conventions had a NASA section. I know there's a NASA section at Emerald City Comic Con. And I think if there's comic book conventions closer to where there's a NASA hub, I mean, we have NASA Ames, which is part of Silicon Valley, but I think also, I'm sure the Houston comic book conventions have NASA there as well. So it's just good to see some real life stuff as mixed in with the sci-fi stuff. So I had a blast. I had my picture taken in front of that or inside that vintage, was it vintage NASA astronaut suit?
I didn't go into.
They had on display.
Yeah, the one they had on display. I think you just showed a picture of it of someone that was in there. You could get your picture taken inside. It looked like you were inside the. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's funny because there were a lot of little kids trying, and the steps didn't quite make it. So it's like a lot of little kids were hanging on for dear life trying to get their picture taken. And when I took my picture, it looked like I was the most excited astronaut on Earth, or not on Earth. But the new astronaut suits are much more sci-fi than that. But I just love that they're getting kids excited about NASA because I think that's important to always have a real life element.
Yeah, they had a whole STEM village for kids.
Yeah.
That I didn't go into because I didn't want to seem creepy, but but I'm sure it was good.
We took a lot of pictures down at the area where they had stuff for kids, and one of my favorite parts was the tech your parents grew up on. Just because I didn't feel old enough already.
Oh, did they have Walkmans?
Oh yeah, they had all kinds of stuff,
VCRs.
like Apple IIs. The one that really killed me was they had. You remember the transparent phones that were popular?
Yeah.
In the late '80s, early. Yeah, they had basically the phone that I had when I was in high school.
Oh my God!
There, and I'm like, oh, good, it's an artifact now.
Like a Motorola? Was it like a Motorola?
No, it was like a landline phone.
Yeah.
It was kind of transparent, had neon colors. For
every time
inside.
people talk about how new VR is, I keep thinking of that Murder, She Wrote episode with Jessica Fletcher trying out a VR video game, and she's got the gloves on and the helmet and everything. And so, we've been working on.
We've known about it a long time, but you couldn't have it in your house before.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. It wasn't like everyday use. It was something that was very high tech that you can only get in certain areas. But yeah, no, I like the Silicon Valley Comic Con just because it's the second year they've done it, so they're still trying to find themselves and try to figure things out. But it's pretty well organized. Parking is a nightmare, as with any convention. Oh yeah, Did you just show? Yeah, there she is. Jessica Fletcher. That's a really good episode. It's actually, if you have Netflix, it's on Netflix right now, so you can watch that episode. It's a murder that takes place in a VR company, and she has to find clues within the VR game. But it's very vector.
I want to do that.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
There needs to be an escape
room. We should remake that for CNET.
That whole season has cell phones in cars too. They actually had mobile cars, but they're huge. They're these huge things.
Right. The bricks.
But I like that they had tech we grew up with at Silicon Valley Comic Con. That's really a good idea.
Yeah, I was like, had one of those in school. Had one of those in school. Oh dear God, I'm old.
Why did they have the Castaway, the volleyball?
Well, that was a separate thing. They also had an auction. Yeah, these are all.
I see. This
screen used props, and one of the coolest things that I saw there. I don't have a picture of it in the gallery, but. I had to get my picture taken with an actual Superman suit that Chris Reeve wore.
Oh.
Granted, it was in Superman 3, but he still wore it.
That's still a good movie. I still love Superman 3.
Or are you not allowed to talk about that?
Well, I don't think anybody's going to get in trouble. But you know how when they have props, for auction, they don't want you touching them because they don't want you screwing.
They don't want your grubby little hands all over the Superman costume.
I was talking to one of the guys who was in charge, and he asked me if I had touched the Superman suit because I was telling him how big of a deal it was for me to see it in person. I'm like. No, I wouldn't even think of touching it because. So he took me in there and I got to touch the belt buckle.
Wow!
That was one of the high points of my day.
That's pretty exciting.
Did energy transfer into your body at all?
I haven't been able to fly yet, and I don't have little Superman spit curl going either.
We are tracking him just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
We used to have a joke at Lucasfilm with that when you would go into Lucasfilm archives and you would touch the Ark of the Covenant, something might happen. So a lot of us were like, I'm not touching that. I'll touch the Captain EO suit before I touch the
just keep
Ark
your
of the
eyes
Covenant.
closed.
Yeah, exactly. But no,
So,
I like that they had a good mix of props. It was good.
So Adam, you must. I mean, if you're building an Iron Man suit, you must have some experience with Comic-Con or cosplay. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I've gone to the San Francisco Comic-Con. It wasn't last year. It might not have been Comic-Con. It was just comic, but it had just been the local comic book store throwing a big event. But no, I went to a big comic book convention. I went to one that was in New York. I have not been to I haven't been to the Silicon Valley one, and I haven't been to the one in San Diego either.
San Diego is the one that's like a war zone.
Yeah. So Richard Browning is being asked to speak at the in the San Diego one, the Iron Man guy.
Oh, sweet.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So that he can fly and do his thing and show people flight of humans.
So is your own quest to build a suit for yourself, is that along the same lines of what he's building, or do you have like a different design in mind?
So it's more partaking in the, what my whole career is enabling people to do these things. And one of the things that I just want to be a part of is the Iron Man suit creation.
Gotcha.
And so, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things in the Iron Man movie that he hasn't built yet. So, yeah. And I'm also fascinated with like underwater, submarine type things. There are a lot of things we haven't discovered underwater. So that'd be a cool suit if you were able to go like super deep rather than up. But yeah, comic books are inspiration for all sci-fi. All technology, like, and science fiction. Star Trek has created countless things that have been built now.
For sure, totally, for sure. And Jeff, for you, I think sci-fi, at least with the Comic-Con, was inspiration to cope with some other issues, and you wrote about that for CNET.
Yeah,
Do you want to dive into that at all?
Yeah, sure. So like, I have been reading comic books since I can read, and been watching kind of like sci-fi stuff since I could watch things, which but I don't get to go to a lot of conventions because nobody really likes crowds, but like when you get to the point where you see a lot of people and then you just start like physically reacting to it, it makes it a little less fun to go. So a lot of times I just kind of watch everybody else go. So what I've been doing is trying to kind of hack my way, I guess, into being able to go to conventions and be able to do things that I want to do. So you just, you can read the article and learn all these things. I would just like to point out, as I mentioned in there, I am not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV. But no, it's just like a lot of like simple things. It's like, you can start at like small conventions. Because I've noticed like in the last couple of years, it seems like even like, like my old hometown had a convention. And my daughter went in the cosplay contest, and she got third place. She was very happy. But it's a nice place to just kind of like ease yourself into it, because it's just kind of scaled, really. Now, to be fair, when I go into even small conventions, if I go into like the dealer area where you can buy all the stuff that you don't need but you really want, I still like kind of like have like a physical reaction, but I need to just kind of like you push through it, and it gets slightly easier the more you do it, but you're still kind of fighting that initial reaction.
I liked one of your tips in there was if you need to move around easily or leave quickly, follow someone tall.
Oh, yes.
Because usually people will, get out of their way.
Yeah.
I sort of did that at Comic-Cons. I would follow people with very large cosplay.
Yes, exactly.
Whether it's
Chewbacca,
Transformers.
probably.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is you run the risk, though, if it's good
if it's
cosplay,
really good, yeah.
they'll stop every 5 seconds to take photos, and then you're surrounded and you're caught with a horrible look on your face, photobombing someone. So you're going to be in like 20,000 photos looking panicked, which could end up being like a court case evidence for something. So if you could follow someone tall that's not doing excessively good cosplay.
Yeah. Something bulky.
Maybe like a crappy Chewbacca.
Yeah, there you go.
Or maybe, someone that's just, Abraham Lincoln. I don't see a lot of those.
Because
but
the hat,
the hat.
that really gives you a lot
yeah,
of space.
yeah, you want to be very careful not to follow around people that are good at cosplay because then you will be stuck
Yeah.
forever. I always found that following goth kids was good.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't like crowds. They don't like the sun. They're antisocial.
So Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter would actually be perfect.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Perfect. But no, that's a great article you wrote, Jeff. I'm glad that you wrote it because I think a lot of us too, the older we get, the less anxious we are the less eager we are to be in the middle of a stormtrooper battalion when we just want to get to the nacho stand or something.
And just like even just something as simple as just grabbing a piece of wall.
Yeah.
That it gives you at least one direction you're not going to be in somebody's way.
Yeah.
That helps out a lot.
Familiarity helps me a lot too. Like the first time I went, I was terrified until I sat in my first panel, and then I was like, "Well, I'm sitting in a chair listening to a speech. I've done that before. Right?
Yeah,
I know what that's like. Now I'm not scared." And then the next year, I was scared again, but not as much because I knew I'd done it the previous year and so on. Like familiar settings.
Another good way to kind of deal with crowds and dealing with overpopulated cons, and you just kind of want to go somewhere to relax and not be in the overcrowded concessions area. Follow anyone with armor. Because a lot of them have to change out of it, and there's special designated areas for stormtroopers or for people dressed in King Arthur armor or the Klingons. They all kind of know where to go to hang out where it's a little bit cooler. The lines aren't as bad. At San Diego Comic-Con, that's upstairs through the exhibit hall, and then you go upstairs. It's the opposite of the entrance.
Yeah.
And they have their own. It's actually really nice over there, and that's where a lot of the celebrities are. Because none of the fans have figured it out yet. I probably just ruined it for them. But
thanks, Bonnie.
Any convention you go to, there's always one space where it feels like, oh, this is where the parents go. Like this is where this is where the old fogies go to relax and not get strollers running over them.
Yeah, I was even able to find, not empty spaces, but empty enough spaces, even at San Diego last year, which I can't believe I actually went to because.
Yeah, San Diego is a madhouse. I mean, it's fun to say you went once, but it's crazy. Did we just lose Adam?
We did, yeah. He had a bad connection. His connection dropped. So
oh, no.
Just want to say thanks to Adam for being on the show. Really awesome having you. It was
definitely inspiring.
Totally.
I'm going to check out your site to see what you're investing in because it sounds really fun.
Oh, yeah. Here's his Twitter in case anyone wants to find him at Adam Draper.
He looks like
Boost
a visionary.
Look
at him.
Right?
He looks like a superhero already.
Millennial visionary.
Yeah, so go check out his stuff. They're working on some cool stuff. There's other stuff too that we haven't even scraped the surface of what they're working on. So
I feel like maybe we should have him on as a regular guest every once in a to find out what he's up to.
Catch up.
We don't want to distract him from investing.
I know. I wish I had money to invest. But no, see, Silicon Valley was fun. To answer your question, Eric, I had fun, but I was only there on Sunday. I was part of an end bullying panel. It was called.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah, it's called "Be a Superhero in Real Life." Chase Masterson, who's a Star Trek actress, and she's done a bunch of stuff. She's really a huge advocate in ending bullying and dealing with bullying and with both teenagers and adults and kids. And I was part of it because I wrote a book called Girls Against Girls, which is a preteen and teenager self-help book about how to deal with mean girls, but also how not to become one in the process. Because it's very easy, and girls have a totally different way of how they bully each other. Oh, a nice ad there. Girls have a way of bullying.
Quickly.
That was quick. Girls have a way of bullying each other different than, let's say, boys. If you, there's a great show called 13 Reasons Why on Netflix. I highly recommend watching. Based on a book, young adult book, and it's about bullying in high school. But this panel was interesting. I was just honored to be on there. I was there with Rod Roddenberry, Gene Roddenberry's son, and there's a really eclectic group of people on this panel. But one of them, cannot remember her name. I think it's Dr. Scarlett. Something's in my Twitter on my phone, but she was, I believe, from either Russia or Latvia, somewhere where there had been radiation, and she moved here as a child, as a refugee, and didn't know English, didn't know anyone. Her family moved here, and she was bullied because when people found out that she was literally radioactive, they bullied her, and she turned to superhero comics, specifically the X-Men, as solace and to find, relatable characters. And of course, Storm, and obviously how many characters in superhero comics are radioactive. Like that's how it becomes. So she, found some sort of,
I'm disappointed Jeff didn't just actually pop out with a number.
I know. She found some common ground there. Actually, if you want to hand me my phone, I can call up her name. Phone's right over there.
Dr. Janina Scarlet.
Yeah, that's it. She sounds like a superhero. But she was really inspiring, and she came out with a book. I think it's called Superheroes in Real Life.
Superhero Therapy?
Yep, that's it. And she goes to schools and teaches kids that they can find positive messages through superhero comics and superheroes and how to deal with day-to-day problems through superhero therapy. And she's an actual psychologist. She has 2 PhDs. I mean, she was so inspiring to sit next to. I'm like, well, I have a book I wrote for teen girls, and then she goes into this. I'm radioactive, and I was a refugee.
Can't compete with.
And she's like super nice, and she's got like 2 degrees, and she's a doctor, and she wrote about superheroes, and she's helping kids in school. So it was definitely an inspiring panel. There was also some cosplayers that reach out to kids for representation. So there's an African American cosplayer from Atlanta who dresses up as Batman, and he says that a lot of kids, people of color come up to him and go, thank you for representing Batman as you, so he's like, I'm not Black Batman, I'm Batman. And it's a very interesting way to deal with that, because a lot of geek bullying happens, especially in the cosplay industry or cosplay community, because if you don't look exactly like the comic book character that you're portraying in the movies or TV, you get a lot of hell. I mean, and there's a lot of curvy girls that like to dress up as Slave Leia, and I don't want to get yelled at because I'm not like a size whatever. Even Carrie Fisher didn't like being that size. Like she's like, it was hard to stay that size for her. So it's just that panel was interesting because it talked a lot about geek on geek bullying, but it also talked about how we can all be positive influences, how we can all help kids growing up in this kind of scenario where they're constantly being bullied, how they can look towards these fictional characters that have overcome massive, hugely bad childhood trauma and bullying, and were able to not become villains out of it. So it was an interesting panel, but it was good that they had that. And we had a pretty decent crowd, even though we were competing against Adam Savage, which is always hard. And then just as a segue to Adam Savage, he dressed up as Chewbacca. And if you know Adam Savage from Mythbusters, whenever he does a convention, he works on a costume that's a huge, elaborate ordeal of a costume that he works on all year. And then he goes into these conventions incognito, so no one knows it's him. So the Chewbacca costume that he built, and he has many, by the way, this one had an animatronic C-3PO that he was carrying on his back. But look how good that is. That's like movie ready. And keep in mind, Adam...
That's like he actually killed Chewbacca.
Yeah.
Took his head.
Chewbacca.
Keep in mind, too, that Adam worked at ILM. I mean, he worked in Industrial Light and Magic, where this was, we had to do stuff like this. Well, I worked at Lucasfilm when he was there. And he knows movie props inside and out. If you go to his site, tested.com, you'll see this video. I wrote an article about it on CNET, so you can see the video there, too. But look at that.
That's awesome.
But the reason I'm wearing the backpack is because it allows me to distribute the load of 3PO. This is about 35 pounds. And the 3PO comes not courtesy, I mean, I paid him for it, from 3PO Master Gordon Tarpley. He put this together for me in a record amount of time. He supplied me with the 3PO parts that were vacuum metallized in gold and pre-weathered. I built it all into this framework. Now, when you're attaching resin parts like this, it can get quite difficult. So I did a couple of structural things. I added a web strap that goes out through the thigh, across the bottom calf, back up through the other thigh, so that even if some of this starts to deteriorate from the wear and tear of the floor, it will still hold together.
And he won't catch on fire. I mean, that's something to remember, too. He's wearing a very flammable costume, and he has a lot of wiring back there.
Think how sweaty he must be.
Oh,
like
God.
in that full body
look at that.
suit.
Look how good
with
that is.
35-pound metal backpack
Yeah.
on.
So there he is going through. I think I walked past him and I didn't realize it. But it's so good. I mean, it's better than probably Peter Mayhew's costume in the first film.
Now, does the C-3PO move around?
Yeah, I
turns
think
its
his head moves around. The eyes light up. You can sort of see a little bit. He does a bunch of different dialogue from the movies. It's pretty impressive.
That's pretty.
And
yeah,
of course,
pretty
he's
awesome.
gathering crest. But Adam's done all different costumes. I mean, he's dressed up as a realistic bear. He's dressed up as was it Toro from the Masaki movies?
yeah.
He really goes all out. And at Comic-Con San Diego is probably the ones where he really tries to get as much bang for his buck. But the problem with San Diego Comic-Con too is you're starting to compete with a lot of cosplayers that this is their livelihood now.
Yeah.
I took a picture with a low budget Chewbacca at CES. Wasn't as exciting as this.
I personally prefer low budget Chewbaccas. I find them much more interesting and hilarious when they're made out of carpet.
I
A
love
certain
it.
charm.
I like it when, I love professional looking cosplayers, of course.
Right.
But I also like when people are halfway. Like, it's more like a Halloween costume.
Yeah.
Like, they love this, they've put their resources into it, but isn't their actual career. And so, like, there was a girl at SVCC who had Jedi robes where she was wearing actually a brown cardigan with cable stitching on it. And it looked really good. You know, it fit the aesthetic, but it was still also homey.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting to a point now at comic book conventions where you're seeing people that are making professional grade cosplay costumes. And a lot of them, this is their livelihood. A lot of them are paid to be at different places, or they're on reality TV shows where they're competing. I mean, you have a lot
I
of
love
great.
those shows.
Yeah.
I
It's
love those
wonderful.
shows.
And a lot of these shows are great too because this is like a calling card for these people to work in actual films and TV. So but I have to agree with you, Kelsey. Like, I really like seeing people that just love the characters but don't necessarily have the time or the patience or the money to put into the costumes, but you still can say, you know, I'm doing something, I'm showing off what I love. And I love crossplay.
Yes.
Where women are playing male characters and men are playing female
I
characters.
saw a lot of Lady Captain Americas this year.
Yeah. I just did an article on CNET, I think it was this week, of Mass Effect. Beatdown Boogie put together their remix reel of all the different Mass Effects from all the different conventions that they've gone to. And Mass Effect is great because, I mean, as a video game, it's even so many different types of characters, but there's a lot of gender swapping going on. And, with
you can play as
Shepard,
either gender.
yeah,
so it's not
that's
really
true. That's true.
cross,
So it
but-
makes sense. But I loved seeing all the different Commander Shepards, both male and female. Obviously, you can do that in the game. So it was interesting. But these are all very professional. I mean, these are the people that like spend years on their costumes and their outfits, as opposed to kind of like the half other.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't cosplay. Like I'm a crafter, so I do a lot of craft books and things, but for me, I'd rather cosplay as a building. I think we were talking about this right before
Yeah.
we went live of what we would cosplay at, especially at a convention like Silicon Valley Comic-Con. It's like I know that Simone Gertz, who does the crappy robots, she cosplays as Windows. Like a computer that shows Windows.
I think I saw a picture
And
of that.
so it was like at her head that was just a computer box, and then she had all black on, but then her face was done like the window. I think it was a Windows logo. I don't know.
I think so.
I thought that was hilarious because that makes sense at Silicon Valley Comic-Con because you want to have something as like tech. So maybe next year I'll do cosplay as a flip phone.
Ooh.
Or some like
I like
old
that.
school tech that no one will understand why I'm dressed like that. I feel like that would be, I don't know, maybe a Walkman.
I've had a long running joke for a while that I'm a very hirsute hairy man, and so I've had a joke for a while that if I continuously shaved all of my head and body hair, I could knit it into a sweater. I'm thinking maybe I should up that until I can. If I shave and collect enough, maybe I could knit my own Chewbacca suit.
There you
You
go.
I think that's a
could.
good goal.
You could. I mean, it's interesting. Steve Sansweet, who's director of fan relations at Lucasfilm, and he has this thing called Rancho Obi-Wan, which is this giant collection that he houses at his place. It's a giant. It used to be a chicken ranch, and he refurbished the barn so he could have his entire Star Wars convention there, or Star Wars collectibles there. And it's a nonprofit, so you can go and visit and, you know, pay a certain amount to visit it. But I asked him what his biggest regret was as a collector that he did not buy. And he said that it was either a garage sale or a flea market. And it was a portrait of Chewbacca done by a barber that basically anytime he cut hair, he would collect the human hair and make these elaborate Chewbacca portraits.
That's
and he's
incredible.
like, he just couldn't do it because it was human hair and he just felt weird about it. But he's always regretted that he didn't buy that because it's actually really well done. It wasn't like cheese ball. It actually looked good, but it was all done with like human hair and beard hair. And I was just like, that's got to be amazing.
And on that
And-
note,
So
Now
even
we
if,
know.
even if
Now
you
we know it's on
don't,
Christmas lists everywhere next year.
maybe I'll do a craft tutorial for Star
There you
Wars.
go.
For May the 4th, we'll do shave your beard and make a Chewbacca portrait at the same time.
We have your next book idea, Bonnie.
Exactly.
I think that's about all the time we've got for. We're running a little over. We could go on forever, probably. Thanks again to Adam Draper from Boost VC for joining us. That was really fascinating. I think we could have gone on for quite a while talking about everything that they're working on over there. Thanks again for having him join us. And thanks also to the crew there in San Francisco, Bonnie Burton, Kelsey Adams, and Jeff Sparkman, our intrepid Silicon Valley Comic-Con reporters, and of course behind the control, Stephen Beecham. Nobody has ever pulled up the Jetsons video
Yay.
faster.
It's a
That was
talent.
pretty incredible.
Thank you, YouTube.
Thanks everyone for watching. Check out everything that we talk and write about, of course, on cnet.com and at boost.vc. That's the website for Adam's company there, Adam's Accelerator. So thank you again. This has been Farsighted. We will see you next month. I'm Eric Mack.